Another episode here of Getting There with Goz, where we talk about the career journeys of athletes, coaches, media members, and more from upstate New York. This one's near and dear to my heart. This one's special for me because the guy you see on our visual side, the voice you're about to hear, is the person long ago out in the Finger Lakes that I was fortunate enough to make an on-air debut with. I'm so excited to finally share his story. Joe Lasky joins us here. So, Joe, for those who might not know you from out in the Finger Lakes area, from Rochester, Canandaigua, all the spots out in Western New York, let's start at the beginning. A younger version of you, 6, 7, 8 years old. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? Was it that same dream job you wanted when you were 18 years old?
I grew up in the Buffalo area, and I really there were so many legends out there that I always wanted to be. I mean, if you're in Buffalo, you had like a holy trinity of three people that were really play-by-play guys that you really looked up to. Ted Darling, Rick Jeanneret, Van Miller. Those were the three. Those are the guys that really I still patterned myself after. I never really thought I could get to that point, though. My foray into radio was not linear. Let's put it that way. I didn't get onto broadcast radio until I was 30, believe it or not. So I don't. My career path is probably not one to follow, but I think there's a couple things in there for people to pick up. But my path was strange.
Yes, and this is one of the reasons I wanted you on, because your path is so unique. And there's one other story.
Yeah.
See, this is the memory I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you grew up in Buffalo. You have a unique story about the greatest rivalry I consider in all of high school sports in upstate New York, about TNT.
Yeah.
That week out there. Can you share that story of, I think nobody may have ever done this, of what you did during TNT week when you were in high school?
Yeah, I had the very unfortunate incident. Yeah, Tonawanda, North Tonawanda, rivals forever. It is a great rivalry. When I was in high school, they wouldn't sell anybody under 18 eggs or toilet paper for that week leading up to the game. They would not allow it. Seriously, they would card you at the stores. You weren't allowed to do it. Unfortunately, my freshman year, in the middle of TNT week, my family moves from Tonawanda to North Tonawanda. So I'm a freshman changing schools that week. It kind of sucked.
The worst. It's hard to even fathom that Western New Yorkers are just laughing about the potential rivalry change of what happens for the U. So you mentioned 30s isn't until you get into your broadcasting. So let's talk about 18-year-old version of you. You said you were a sports broadcasting fan. You grew up with those Western New York legends. What happens when you're 18? Do you go traditional college path? Do you not go to college? Is it not communications? Let's go through that spot in your life.
I didn't get to college straight away. A lot of stuff was going on. I was very much a musician at that time. So that's kind of where I was. So basically it involved working at a gas station by day and going and trying not to get the cops called to my friend's house when we were rehearsing at night. So that was kind of where I was. And I didn't really get to school till I met my future wife. While we were planning the marriage thing, we both went back to school at the same time. And I originally started out at Niagara County Community College, NCCC, started taking some classes, but never really had like a direction. And then when our son was born, 3 months later, we moved out here. She got a job at the VA in Canandaigua. So we came out here. That wasn't much of a decision to make. It's like she was making real money. So we came out. And off and on, I wasn't linear, but I went to FLCC. Still was more of a media production bent to it, but one of the things you can do for extra credit was to take part in broadcasts of FLCC basketball, which they actually broadcast on public access, Channel 12, which is the studio's right out of the college. And I wanted to do it. I'd never done it before, no training, no nothing. I just kind of mocked all the stuff that was in my head to get through the game. And plus, I was also working overnight at Wegmans. I hadn't had much sleep, but I got in, and apparently everything was good. I still have those games burned on a DVD in my house. So I did them. I didn't know if anything was going to come out of it. Fortunately, around that time, I answered a online ad for a board op at WGVA in Geneva. And that is where I met Ted Baker. The interview I had was maybe 15 minutes. It was basically, can you work these 3 faders on this board here? Can you? And can you be here tomorrow by like 6? I answered affirmatively to both of those. And so, okay, you've got a game tomorrow. Here's a key. You're going to produce my broadcast.
That's simple.
Yeah, it was that. It was literally that easy. Just out of the, I just answered this thing thinking, okay, I being a musician, I'd been able to work faders and stuff like that. I knew audio, so I'm sure I could work 3 faders, and I could certainly click a button and make an ad play. So that was it. I had that interview, and of course, I go in the next night and I listen to Ted Baker. As you know, Ted Baker is amazing at play-by-play. Why he hasn't gone further in the business, I have no idea, but he's incredible. So, and I know a lot of board ops don't actually like listen to the broadcast very much. It's not interesting, but I did. I was enthralled. I was, I had the monitor speakers up. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm listening to. This is a high school football broadcast. And I'm just thinking, this guy's as good as any of those legends I mentioned, growing up back at home. And the bug kind of got planted at that point. So I kept doing that for a while, in addition to, working 2 other jobs and finishing off my associate's degree. And, but I had the DVD. I actually also had a VHS made of I did 2 games at FLCC. Didn't get me anywhere right away. Matter of fact, that VHS tape was used to function as a monitor stand for Ted for like 10 months. Finally, I got him to watch the thing, and it just so happened that the group of radio stations, GVA is part of a cluster, and they had just gotten an FM translator for the Canandaigua signal, WCGR, and they were looking to put sports on. And I was there. And so once that happened, it was, okay, we're going to start off sports there. Can you do something? I'm like, of course I can. I'll fake it even if I don't know what I'm doing. And it just so happened it was lacrosse season. And I knew nothing about lacrosse. Zero. I knew nothing. The first game I did, I'll remember it to this day. The first game I did with Canandaigua was they were playing McQuaid at Aquinas. And I didn't know the terms. Fortunately, I was in the same booth with the camera person that they had, who's literally feeding me terms into my ear. And I got to the broadcast, but very quickly we picked it up. But yeah, it about as random as you could possibly imagine. That's how I got into radio.
You mentioned the nerves that were there for that first broadcast. So many young broadcasters are going to have that same nerves you have there. And there's something special about the Canandaigua lacrosse program. I know I'm jumping ahead here timeline-wise, but I think this is a perfect time to add some context to it. Later on in your career, you followed Canandaigua high school lacrosse, so much so that they had their own reality show at one point, and you were a part of this reality show. I know that's a little bit further in your career, but I feel like it's a perfect time to talk about the development of you as a broadcaster, from you not knowing lacrosse to you basically being on a reality show years later.
It was actually the following year.
1 year later.
It was 1 year later. Yeah. 2008 was the debut, and I was with them that whole season up until they went to the state semifinals. They ran into West Genesee that year. They had a titanic game in that semifinal that they lost by a goal. But it was the following year that all that stuff happened. And the camera crew was there, bumped into them quite a bit. You couldn't have written it any better because they ride it all the way to the state title with this camera crew around. That was tremendous as well. Got to be at home for that one. It was at, I don't know what they're calling the stadium now. I think it was Salem Stadium at the time in Rochester. But that was a tremendous ride. And by that point, I think I was able to pick it up quickly enough that to be integrated into that. and you don't get to call too many state championships. And it happened in my second year of being on air. Between that, they went to Albany at the end of the season and, got the resolution dedicated to them. The whole thing was just kind of an amazing ride. And yeah, it just happened in year 2.
You get this national brand of lacrosse at the high school level,
Mhm.
and you also move on to not one but 2 colleges, and as an alumni, and my sister an alumni of those schools, Hobart and William Smith. Take us through how you move from the high school broadcast to the college broadcast for those schools.
Again, it was just kind of being available right after. And again, this is an important lesson. When somebody asks you if you do something, say yes. Say yes, even if you don't know, just fake it. As long as you tell somebody yes, they'll go along with it. So, like right after I'd started, right around April or so, 2008, I guess it proved competent enough in lacrosse that Greg Cotterill, who is still part of, is still the general manager of WHWS and WEOS on the campus, asked me if I could do women's lacrosse, which, of course, again, he was offering me a chance to do it. And so I say yes immediately, not realizing that the women's game is not the same sport as the men's game. So I had to pick that up right away as well. The rules are still, they've gotten a little closer in recent years. Back then, it was almost a different sport. But I could do it, was competent enough. He'd listen to the game, said it was good, and off we were. It really wasn't much more involved in that. Of course, I didn't know that at the time, I'd still be doing games there, 14 years later. It was just, again, a question of, can you do this? I will do the best I can. Give me a microphone, off we go.
For an audience that's a little bit east of you, I know we're talking about this timeline of 2008, 2009, and a little bit more context from my end. Trust me when I say this, Joe did not sound like a person who had only been broadcasting for a year. I can say that confidently. As someone who sat next to you in 09, January, February of 09, I'm now 13 years later stunned that was year 1 for you. Thinking back now, it's crazy to think that you were that good, that fast. Look, you went through school, you had the mentors, the people that you listened to pick it up that fast is rare. And with all that being said, even when you're going through year 1 and year 2, whatever age you might be, whether you be 18, your mid 20s, your early 30s, what were some of the things you learned early in your broadcasting career that said, okay, I can become a better play-by-play broadcaster if I fix this or do this? How did you become better year 1, year 2 to year 3 and continue to?
I think it was just reps, really. I mean, of course, you get the first couple games, you're a nervous wreck. That's just the way it's going to be. But it was just reps, and I was so busy early on that I really didn't get to think a whole lot about it. Once I was in, right? It was a full lacrosse season that first year. Summer was off, but right back to the fall, it was football. It was a full-on schedule at HWS. At that point, I was like, okay, you're in. And we've got soccer. We got everything else we can throw you into. We need a second voice because Ted Baker is also still there. Can only be in one place at one time. So it was just constant reps. I was, a pretty busy guy just on the sports stuff. So it was just really a matter of just getting the reps. I think, it would be difficult not to improve just being that busy. If anybody, has a chance to do as much as possible, that's really kind of the way I recommend it. Just do everything you can. And I don't want to say overanalyze, because you can get in your own head that way, because you really want it to be you talking without having to think too much about it, if that makes any sense. But it was just a constant, okay, I got this game, I'm prepping for the next one, and just kept it going. And I guess practice makes pretty good.
So many broadcasters might exactly say what you said there.
Yeah.
And by the way, Newman Valley, a national championship hockey team you call within your first 5 years, that wild finish in the cooler with Hobart as the seed that barely got in. It's funny now looking back that Joe Burke, the head coach of Skidmore, is still there. You and I were on that call for the Liberty League Championship where Skidmore cuts down the nets. There you go, Coach Burke. Here's Joe, the broadcaster from that game. He gets a shout out on this show as well. So you had all these great broadcasts. You did it. These next two questions are a little interesting. It always happens in these conversations as people's responsibilities changes and roles changes. How much, if at all, are you still working with HWS? If not, what kind of, if you want, take us through exactly kind of what that role is and how much you want to delve into what goes on now with you and the Statesman and the Herons.
No, I'm still there. I did have to take most of last year off. I was at the time employed as a producer at 13 Wham. I did step away from that and then open my weekends back up. So I'm back this year. Definitely glad to be back this year. The schedule looks pretty full again. These days, it's more of, obviously I'm doing the games, but there is more of a focus, and it's great for this year, of more student sportscasters. So that's been kind of an unofficial thing that I know I take some pride in. I believe Ted does as well. You know, where you can bring up folks like yourself and the whole crew we had at HWS Sports Hour back in the day. Because to me, that's still, I think, more rewarding than me calling the games myself, because I can kind of do that, right? And it's fun, but I think I get more out of the mentor part of it. And there's been plenty of people that have done things. This past weekend was Hobart Soccer Alumni Weekend. So we got a visit in the booth from Tyler Terrens. I'm sure you remember that name.
Yes.
He was a little after you.
Yeah, a little after me, and hopefully he's a soon-to-be guest, Tyler. Start answering my text messages, by the way.
Yeah, but he stopped by again. For those that don't know, he went from Hobart soccer player to Hobart commentator to a number of different sports, and he rode that all the way to now being the play-by-play guy for an MLS team. I mean, and also works for the Big Ten Network as a busy guy, and to be able to see stuff like that. There's been you obviously. We came a long way from the road trip to Ithaca. Still remember that pretty well. And there's been some others too, and to me that's been kind of the fun parts. Like at Hobart, for folks that don't understand, they don't have a broadcast curriculum. There's no like course settings like that. They obviously have the 2 radio stations, which is great, but there's no formal broadcast thing. And to me, it's almost kind of an underdog story where people will go to the school without the broadcast, course or anything like that, and still be able to make a career. To me, that's just awesome. I love that, and I love that part of it too. There's another great group of student sportscasters that throughout this year, we'll see where they go. It's fun to see from point A, that first game when a student is obviously nervous and maybe not going to talk, and then you get toward the end of the season where you kind of give them a little more room, right? It's like, okay, this game, the first game, you're probably going to do the color part, not the play-by-play, but you see how we kind of prep for things, and doing the homework is essential, and you kind of learn that. But if you get a few games in, and okay, I'll do the first one, I'll get us situated, you take half number 2. And then after a while, it's like, okay, the show is yours. I will be back here to back you up, and it's your show. You do it. And to me, it's fun just being part of that.
There's something to be said there about the evolution of a young broadcaster too, because in 2008 and 2010, there weren't truly forums like this. Podcast, grab a microphone, do what you want, get your reps. You can pull up a game from YouTube right now and call it and make your own tape. It's really wild to think 10, 15 years later how that's changed. Have you seen that firsthand working with student broadcasters where maybe, with no disrespect to the Syracuses and the Ithacas and the Oswegos, where some students may have to wait till their junior year even to get on air, you might see it firsthand where somebody who's 17 or 18, they've been doing this before. They've been doing a podcast. They've been watching a game. Are you seeing an improvement of younger broadcasters because of the advancement of technology?
Well, again, you hit it on the head. Everyone's kind of in some way, shape, or form broadcasting, right? Everyone's got the gram. Everybody's got the YouTube channel. My own kids do. I mean, if either of my kids want to make this a career, they'll probably be better than me. The youngest one is already better than me. So there's definitely a lot of that. There's definitely a truth. YouTube is a democratization of broadcasting. You could be hanging out in front of your laptop or your phone and put that out to the world. and people actually make money this way. And it's, it's you definitely do see that there is more of, getting more people out in the world. So it's not just, hope you get lucky and the local radio station finds you. Yeah, you can put yourself out there, and it's really exciting to do that without having a gatekeeper there.
Well, let's also clarify one thing. You mentioned Wham, and this is going to confuse some people in central New York and eastern side of New York. So there's a
Mhm.
Wham television station. Jenna Cottrell, Saratoga native. She does things out there, Buffalo Plus and everything. There's a
Mhm.
Wham radio station. Kind of explain a little bit of, are they connected? Is it the same? What happens with Wham and what's your role there?
I am on the radio side. I did work for the TV station for about 9 months or so. Um, usually weekends with Jenna. That she's usually the weekend sports person. Some of the chats she had with Dan Schrack on there are legendary, by the way, because
Right.
Dan Schrack knows nothing about sports, and just watching those two go at it when he knows nothing about sports is incredible. Great television. Um, they're not formally aligned. They're actually two separate companies. Sinclair Broadcasting owns 13 Wham. Wham 1180 is an iHeart radio station, but they do sync up in terms of uh, the radio side uses 13 Wham's meteorologists. We do have whoever's running sports that day on to do a segment during the 5 o'clock news hour. Jenna would be one of those. Mike Catalana, Dan Fates do that part as well. So there's an informal alignment between the two. They're not the same, but they do have the same call letters, and there's always phone calls going to the wrong one. That one happens all the time. But there's a little bit of an informal alignment, and I happened to be between both of those for a little while, so it was kind of interesting navigating both of those there for a time, even though I, was working 7 days a week and no free time.
We're in the spot in September of 2022 when we're talking and taping that so many people post COVID, we've called it the great resignation. People are kind of moving away from what would be considered a traditional job and going towards things they're passionate about and careers they're passionate about. And your story is so unique and different because later on in your life, you decided, you know what, I can do this broadcasting thing for a living. And you did that. But it feels like there are so many people that have that trepidation of making that leap. So I'm giving you a two-parter to close. You gave advice about a broadcast, but for those older people in their careers, in the sense of young and they haven't started yet, what's the best advice you can offer somebody who wants to make a traditional change from this is what I do to this is what I want to do? Because you did it and you made it happen. 15 years, you're still doing this thing.
Well, again, I think it's probably easier now. Again, for the things you just mentioned, having be able to go to Instagram or YouTube and put yourself out there without having anybody without having to go and press somebody or get through, somebody through email to somebody, hoping they'll read it and at least give you an interview. You don't have to really do that anymore. It's a matter of if you can build your own following that way and build your own brand socially. So you don't have to quite do it that way anymore. It really comes down to, I guess, are you interesting enough with whatever it is you're doing? Again, if you like what you're doing, that's going to give you a big, big step up on that, whether it be sports or politics news, which I do like as well. And that's kind of where my focus is now in the day job at Wham 1180, where I'm the afternoon news anchor there. So I live in that political world quite a bit, which is a different type of sport. It's a little dirtier. But you can find your way. If you can talk about whatever it is and be passionate about it, and enough people are interested, you can make a show out of it. You can make it into your own career if you really want to. I mean, it's the possibilities are absolutely endless. You just watch, my kids constantly turn me on to YouTube shows. And, they're people mostly with no broadcast qualifications per se, but they find their angle and they're able to do whatever it is, whether it be, they're into a lot of sports, but they're in a lot of other stuff. They like, I know the one guy, I can't think of the dude's name, that it's a good hacker. They like that type of thing. As long as you care about it and can talk about it, you can make that work. And that is really exciting.
Right now I'm in the Blippy world, so eventually I will follow your path into the more influential YouTubers, unlike the 2-year-old that I have now who is obsessed with Blippy. But yes, there are so many great things young broadcasters can find. I have to cheat because usually that's how we close conversations on the best advice you can offer a young broadcaster. I'm cheating now because we have our connections to, of course, HWS, and there's expansion in sports going on. So I know it's always tricky to talk about the future when it comes to sports, especially at the college level. But for people who might be finding out, take us through this expansion of what's happening, and what do you think it means for the future of Hobart and William Smith athletics for the future?
Well, they added 2 sports. They added volleyball and they added baseball. I'm really excited about baseball. That's the one sport I haven't called. I've never done a baseball game, which is kind of amazing that, 14 plus years in, I've never called a baseball game, and I may get the chance to do that. So I'm really looking forward to that part. And again, it's more opportunities. And I will say that to anybody that comes up through sportscasting, that one of the best things you could do is never say no. Just figure it out. I mean, everyone wants to do, your favorite sport, football, basketball, whatever, but that may not be the opportunity in front of you right now, right? You may have to call a sport that isn't as exciting to you, like soccer. Some people aren't into it. Some people aren't into lacrosse. Although, again, I wasn't originally. I am now. I love the sport and love to call it. Don't say no. I mean, if you're going to get an opportunity to call something and it's not your favorite sport, just do it anyway. Do it anyway. Get the reps. Get good, and then you would be surprised at how much those other opportunities open up for you.
I hope you get to call a game at Big Mac, McDonough Park, with Hobart baseball out there. It is a great venue, especially since it's been remodeled and changed up. So enjoy that action on the way. When I launched this podcast, I thought, okay, we got to talk about people who are mentors, people who talk about broadcasting. Joe Lasky, I waited and waited and waited because you mentioned this, and I'm so glad your memory held up. It's Hobart versus Ithaca in football. But there's a story about, look, when you get down as a broadcaster, when equipment doesn't work and you're looking over and everybody else's is good, don't get discouraged. Keep fighting through it and keep making things happen. Thank you for being my mentor when I started my broadcasting career. I'm so glad I get to spotlight your career on this forum. And who would have guessed 15 years this would have ever even been a thing? Thank you for doing this. You can do the most important thing now, to go be a dad and go pick up your kids and talk to them. And we're both in fatherhood now, which, God, we are both old. I remember when you had hair. I remember when I had more hair. My God, Joe, thank you for doing this, man. Let's not wait this long again to reconnect. Looking forward to staying in touch, man. Keep crushing on the broadcast out there in the Finger Lakes.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time. Yeah, I'm going to go again. By the way, the one oldest kid that I think used to come by is now in his 2nd year of college.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That just hit me in the gut. Oh.
And the younger one is a freshman in high school.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I have to hit end on this broadcast before I go and puke. Give them my best. Thanks, man. We're looking forward to talking again soon. See ya.
Yeah, we'll do it again.